Today, we have with us someone who has managed to successfully do a lot of things for somebody his age. He has completed his CA having secured a rank in IPCC. He has also completed his ACCA diploma in IFRS. He has been a professor at one of the most reputed colleges of Mumbai. The reason why you'll find me addressing him as sir, as he was one of my professors as well. He has had a great stint in business modeling at one of the big four, and then went on to pursue his MBA from ISB, one of the best B schools globally. So thank you so much, Siddhant, sir, for agreeing to do this.
Thank you for having me, Harshit. And it's always a proud moment when a teacher gets to be interviewed by a student. So thank you for having me.
Great. So why don't we start with you giving us a glimpse of your academic journey so far?
Sure. So I started off, I would say I've been born and brought up in Mumbai for the past 20, 25 years. And my entire education and everything has been revolved around the city. I started off with Bombay Scottish School, and then my academics was basically first taking the major decisions with respect to science versus commerce. The decision which is faced by every Indian household, decided to take up commerce and took the chartered accountancy route. As far as my academics is concerned, I did my 11th and 12th, my CBSE schooling from RN Podar, post which I pursued my Bachelor's of Commerce from Narsi Monjee College. And of course, yes, simultaneously, my chartered accountancy journey was on. In terms of marks, I would say I've been lucky, or rather, I would say it's also, I would give a fair share of credit to my hard work, but the highest share to my parents, my friends, my teachers who've been really supportive all throughout. And I think as a result of all of this, I've been fortunate to have got good marks all throughout. And I think one of the most notable achievements all throughout my journey would be my rank in the CA inter examinations. I had secured the All India 35th rank. And why that is special is not because it's a rank and that helps me to get a good point on my CV, but because I personally believe that that rank is a product of the hard work of each and every individual, starting from, of course, my mother, father, my sister, and just every single effort has gone into it. A lot of perseverance, a lot of patience. I would say a lot of mental strength, physical strength, and emotions have gone into it. So that remains one of the most special moments till date.
Great. So moving from your academics to your articleship experience, if you could briefly mention your stint at either a big four or mid-sized firm, what areas did you get to explore in your articleship experience?
Right. So just again, as I said that, initially had the science versus commerce decision. Once you pursue your chartered accountancy journey, you have a lot of decisions to make. One decision comes right after clearing your CA intermediate examination. That is, which firm do you actually choose to pursue articleship in? The natural choice is between a big four or any other firm. That's how the entire universe of CA firms has been categorized as. So my goals were clear that I wanted an articleship option where I could also get to explore my college life, because if you go for a big four, of course you get a very good brand, you get a very good exposure, and of course it's one of very good places to do your articleship in. But at that time, I believe that the commitment that is required of a big four articleship is perhaps one that requires you to compromise a little more of your college extracurriculars, which I was not willing to at that point of time. So I chose to intern in pursue my articleship in C. Agarwal and Company. And so the other advantages of doing it in a small to mid-sized firm as this one was that you get to rotate across several departments. Let's say I did a couple of projects on the statutory audit front. I did a couple of those on the internal audit front, and then I did some taxation work as well. So I believe in a small to mid-sized firm, I got the right balance between academics, my extracurriculars, and that articleship, as well as across several departments within the firm.
Right. Okay. So one question which I wanted to really, ask, how did your journey as a professor at Narsi Monjee begin? I believe you were involved in a lot of curricular activities while you were a student, say the planning forum, the students council, etc. So how did this journey of being a professor evolve? And were you always passionate about teaching? Did you think of it as a full-time career option anytime before?
Absolutely. I think so. My journey as a teacher, I personally feel started off when I started teaching my sister at home. I started helping out my friends. So I have personally been, okay, let me just take a few seconds out to just take you through what I have personally lived up to, and what I have believed has been the driving force of my journey till date is that you should never deny help and never hesitate to seek help when you want. And this entire motto, I think, has helped me create a community of friends that I help whenever I can, and I reach out for help whenever I want to. And this started at home as well. So when my sister, she's just a year younger, and we pursued the exact same journey till date. She's also a chartered accountant, and I've taught her a couple of subjects. And I really enjoyed that. I mean, of course, apart from the fact that she's my sister and I had to teach her, there's no other option. But having said that, I've also enjoyed the entire process of teaching concepts, because when you teach, you learn a lot more. So that is something which has always stuck with me, and that has always been my passion. So there was not like a single day I woke up and I suddenly felt that, okay, I want to become a teacher. I think it's been a gradual process of academics, of interactions over the years, that has got that subtle passion in me that, okay, I want to grow up and teach. Answering your question about teaching formally, definitely, I mean, I would not say that formally in a sense of full-time teaching, because as of now, as you know, I'll be addressing this later as well, that I'm venturing into a management consulting role. So with that, I'll have to be realistic about the timelines also. I mean, I may say that, okay, I want to get into full-fledged teaching, but it may not be possible to do that along with a full-fledged job. But having said that, that passion is still alive, and whenever I do get the opportunity to volunteer, teach, or do whatever bit I can, and take this interview, for example, I'll be more than happy to do that.
Great, sir. So moving on to your corporate journey, you started with one of the big fours, which is Deloitte, in the business modeling role. So can you demystify this particular profile for us? What does it entail, and how was your experience working with Deloitte in this particular process?
Sure. So business modeling is one profile. So just to set the context, so I was working in the Deloitte India joint venture, where we catered, or we worked with the other member firms of Deloitte, more predominantly Deloitte UK, Deloitte Canada, Deloitte Middle East, to name a few, Deloitte Switzerland as well. So we assisted them with all the business modeling requirements that they want. Now let me demystify the word business modeling per se. So business modeling as a department, what we did was, so for example, let's say if there is a potential merger which is happening, or a potential deal which might happen or which might come through, and let's say from a buy side or a sell side perspective, one of the clients wants us to value his or her company, or make financial models through which they can forecast their financial statements and come to a valuation of the company. So we help them with creating the financial modeling. We help them with building dashboards, interactive dashboards, and we also help them with some miscellaneous projects. So just to name a few, so we were working on a project with a pharmaceutical company on ClickSense, where they wanted the entire compliance data. So they have to submit various third-party study reports and several study reports, because they're working on an oncology drug. So we had put all that data in the form of a dashboard on ClickSense. So that is one type of work we do, and of course all the different types of financial modeling engagement. So that is what this department essentially does. And the most interesting part about this department is it is a place where engineers, CAs, and MBAs, all of them work together and they do the same thing. So that's how diverse this entire profile is. So and that's one part. So you build financial models, you review financial models, you do visual dashboarding, and several other assignments that come, coding as well, a little bit of it. So it was a nice role, I would say. I enjoyed it thoroughly.
Okay, great. So the journey until now was smooth. It was good. The future looks bright. So why did the thought of taking upon GMAT and then pursuing your MBA come through? So what was the initiative motive behind pursuing an MBA?
Right. So at this point, I would also take the liberty to answer just another question as well, which has been cropping up now and then, and a lot of people have asked me this as well. That do you really need to do an MBA after becoming a chartered accountant? And is like MBA a must do? A sort of a narrative or a mindset. So to that, let me just make it very clear, at least from my experience and my journey till date, that absolutely not. It is absolutely not important or essential to do an MBA after becoming a chartered accountant, because I personally believe CA is one of the most fulfilling qualifications. You have every type of a career path open for you after you complete your studies. You can get into the, of course, the niche traditional finance domain. You can start your own practice. You can get into management consulting and whatnot. You can do everything. You can start teaching as well. So it's not like it is important, not at all. Having said that, coming to the point that why I chose to pursue my MBA was, so as I initially said, that I've been born and brought up in Mumbai for about 25 years now. I just turned 26, so 26 years. And I've never really formally stepped out of home. My schooling was in Mumbai, my work was in Mumbai, education was in Mumbai, everything was in Mumbai, right? So, and I have been fortunate to develop a good friend circle there as well. But down there, I wanted to get out. I wanted to explore my independent side as well. I want to grow independent and develop certain I would say habits of staying independent as well. And so that all culminates to getting an MBA experience is why I wanted to do an MBA, not because I felt that CA is not sufficient or I wanted to add something to my CA qualification. Of course, a qualification is never worthless, never. Any qualification is always help you in some way or the other. But my reasons of doing an MBA was for the experience of getting out, staying alone, staying independent. I had apprehensions about using a gas stove before. Now I use a gas stove very comfortably. I make tea, I can cook a few dishes, and I've been disciplined with my workouts. So I think that is one of the reasons and the foremost reason why I decided to do an MBA.
Right, great. So to a few, it might sound silly, but this adds a lot of value to your overall personality, and it definitely helps you in many intangible ways. So great. I really second that thought of yours. But so why then not go for a 2-year program at any of the leading IIMs? Why choose an ISB, the 1-year program at ISB? Is there any specific reason for that?
Right. Essentially, so on this front, I mean, of course, there are a lot of debates which are already on in this country, right? On various fronts, like you have the ISB IIM debate, you have the 1-year, 2-year debates, and whatnot. But my choice was not more of a 1-year versus 2-year thing. It was more about the institute I wanted to get into. So of course, every institute is good in its own sense. I wouldn't say that I joined ISB because others were not good, but I'll probably touch upon why I believe. Why I narrowed down on giving the GMAT and applying only to the Indian School of Business and studying there is. I had a look at the curriculum and the way the entire course is structured. I personally believe that the international alignment of ISB in terms of the visiting faculty that we have here, we have faculty from the Wharton School of Business, we have faculty from the Kellogg School of Business, and our very own residential faculty who are very accomplished in their own fields. So I had a look at all of that, and I personally was very inclined towards the kind of research that ISB has. So the focus on research that is there at ISB, I think it's the highest and the most intricate across all B schools in India, and even in across the world. It's at par. So that was one of the reasons for me to come to ISB. Second is, of course, I mean, 1-year, 2-year did not weigh a lot on me, I would say. But having said that, having got me admitted at ISB, I would say that 1 year probably aligned well into my life journey, because I think what I want, like with respect to what I want to do, how fast I want to do things, and what I want to do at different parts of my life, I think that 1 year aligned well. But more importantly, it was the entire structure of the course that appealed to me more than anything else, and that's what got me to ISB.
Okay. So moving on, can you take us through your GMAT preparation? What are the ideal scores you need to make it to ISB, and what are the sorts of admission criteria? What is it that you need on your CV to make it to ISB?
Right. So all right. So let me just take this step by step. So firstly, with respect to let me just maybe touch upon the application process a bit. So first choice you need to make is whether you want to do an MBA or not. Once you've decided to do an MBA, the next choice is whether you want to do it from India abroad or from where you want to do it. You just create a list of some potential institutes where you would like to do your MBA from. Having said that, after you've decided all of that, you start looking at the various deadlines when you want to apply, and then start working out as to how you would go about it. The prerequisite to an MBA for ISB and all the other schools abroad is a GMAT exam or a GRE exam for people who are from an engineering background. And similarly for IIMS is a CAT exam. So in any case, you need to start preparing for your entrance exam. Coming to my preparation, so I had applied to the Indian School of Business through the early entry route. That was back in 2018, and the deadline for that was 15 September. So I had worked it backwards. So I had taken a GMAT date. So GMAT date can be taken at any time, by the way. It's not a fixed date like CAT. You can take it at any time of the year. I took it in July. So that was one part as to when I want to give my GMAT. So I had scheduled my GMAT then. After scheduling that, I decided on how I would actually go about preparing for my GMAT. Coming from a CA background, we've done CPT 11, 12. Maths was pretty, I would say, pretty comprehensive, the mathematics domain in all of these aspects. So the GMAT maths and the maths that we've studied till date was pretty much overlapping. So I felt a little comfortable with the mathematics part. On the verbal front, I had also, I had attended a few classes of IMS. I had enrolled into a full-fledged GMAT coaching class at IMS and had attended the verbals classes and mathematics classes also to an extent to get an idea of how the GMAT exam functions and what questions can I expect. Post that, after I got an idea about what type of questions I can expect in the examination, it was all about practice. You practice more and more. So just like we have practice manuals in chartered accountancy, we have GMAT official guides, which have a repository of a lot of questions. So I refer to those. You have separate dedicated GMAT guides for verbals, for quants, and then you have one for combined. Then you have the GMAT official website as well. That's mba.com, where you have a lot of questions. You have a lot of material where you can, some of that is free and some of that is something which you'll have to purchase. Apart from that, there are 6 mock tests on the mba.com website. I think 2 are free and 4 are purchased. That was the thing at my time. So I did a lot of mock tests as well. So to just sum it up, I believe that GMAT is firstly understanding what type of questions you can expect, practicing a few to get a hang of the exam. And once you got a hang of the exam, it's about practicing, and doing a lot of mock examinations. One myth which I would like to burst here is, and I think this has been busted a lot, but even then it still remains in the minds of a lot of people, is that GMAT score is not the only determining factor. I repeat, it is not the only determining factor as far as your applications are concerned. It is just one of the parameters which is considered. Apart from that, there are a lot of different aspects of your profile which are considered when the school is deciding whether or not to give admission to you.
So if you can briefly touch upon the other factors which you mentioned, if you can cover a few apart from the GMAT score.
Sure. So in addition to that, of course, your overall profile. So let's say if you're coming to ISB, you need about 2 years of work experience, right? So they will look at your work experience, where you worked, what you worked, and what domain. They will look at your academic qualifications, the institutes where you've pursued academic qualifications, where you've completed your undergrad from. They will look at your grades as well. Again, grades are not the only thing that matter. One of the things they will definitely look at it. A good grade always helps, right? So they look at that. They will look at your extracurricular achievements, what you've done in various fields, let's say sports, arts, or dramatics, debates. They'll look at all of that. Apart from that, you'll have to provide a recommendation, a professional. You'll have to provide the details of a professional referee who most likely has to be someone from your workplace. So maybe the person you reported to. So he or she will write a recommendation for you. One of the most important aspects of your application would also be your essay. So in your application, you have to write 2 essays where the questions will be very simple. Why you want to do an MBA, how ISB will help you in your MBA. So the entire about your entire essay should cover your entire journey and how well you write it, how well you bring about your journey in that essay, how well you've studied about ISB, how well you know ISB, and how clear are you with respect to your ambitions and how ISB can help you. All of that will matter. And having a look at all of that in let's say in consonance with each other will basically lead the admissions team to decide whether or not they want to give you admission or not. So that's how. So they look at all of this together. So for instance, let's say if your GMAT score is weak, but you're very strong in your other aspects, right? So that makes up for it. So
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the bottom line is they look for diversity, right? So every B school looks to maintain a good diversity in its cohort. So if you have about 800 900 people joining, so they definitely want the cohort to have all types of talents where everyone can learn from each other. So that's the underpinning to deciding the cohort for the year.
Okay, okay. So one of the things you mentioned just now in your previous answer, the batch size usually tends from 800 to 900 students per batch. So, does this huge intake at ISB in any way, maybe the pros or the cons, affect your curriculum or your studies with a batch size of 800 or 900? Is it in a way beneficial or say not healthy?
Right. So to that, I think so a batch size. I mean, we do have a huge batch size, but we also have a huge campus to accommodate that batch size, right? So we have two campuses. One is spread across 260 acres, and one is spread across 70 acres. So they are more than big to accommodate like 600, 700, 800, or 900 people. So I think there are no cons. I would say just pros. I have only and only I can share the upsides. As I have already touched upon, having a large batch size helps you have a very diverse cohort. You can learn a lot from a lot many people. So that is one good thing. Having also, so a batch size does not mean that everyone would be in the classroom all at the same time. We have about we have 4 sections here in Mohali, and we have about another 8 sections in Hyderabad, and each section has about in our time we have about 50 students. Ideally, I think it goes up to 60-70 students. So you're still studying in a classroom of about 60-70 students, so that discussion is still very productive. It's not that all 600 people are in the classroom at the same time discussing the same thing at the same time, so it's not chaotic in that sense, right? So that is one. That is with regards to the formal classroom learning. Apart from that, when you interact with a lot more people outside the classroom, let's say in the dining area or across in the sports facilities, that's when the advantage of having a huge cohort actually comes in, right? You're interacting with so many people every day, so many new people, learning from so many people, and they're coming from so many new places also in India, right? It's not like, for example, I've been born and brought up in Mumbai, so I've been exposed to only people who've been in Mumbai since so many years. Now coming here, I've interacted with so many people from so many different geographies. I've been privy to so many Mumbai versus Delhi debates now. So that's the advantage. So I believe a huge cohort definitely has a huge advantage, I think, in terms of learning a lot of things, and you're taking back these friendships. Remember that. I mean, it's 900 people.
Absolutely.
You're taking back 900 friendships back home. So you can fall back upon these 900 people back, right? So I mean, if you have an option of falling back upon 900 people or the option of falling back upon 500, 600 people, what would you choose? 900, right? So that's my take on a huge batch size.
All right, all right. So you have almost, I guess, completed 3/4 of your journey at ISB. So if you can summarize or maybe share 2-3 highlights and your major learning experiences there at ISB.
Sure. So I'm sure a lot of them who have keenly studied about ISB would have heard that ISB is about a fast-paced life and a lot of things happening at a lot of happening at every point of the day. While I'll not disagree to the fact that we have a lot of things happening around, so I would also want to just probably drop in my bit of an experience here that if you manage your time well and you prioritize things, I think it'll be a journey that you'll enjoy, and it will be quite exciting. So let me just maybe formalize this in terms of 2-3 learnings that I have had. So firstly, in terms of just being clear about what is important and what's not, and accordingly structuring and dividing my time accordingly. So that is one thing. Prioritizing is one learning which I would say. Secondly is go with the flow. This is the learning. You can't really plan for everything. You can't just have a timetable for each and everything. I mean, you can't be saying, okay, this 1 hour I'll be doing this 1 hour I'll be doing that, this 1 hour this. So prioritizing is not about just making a timetable about on an hourly basis. Prioritizing is just having a basic idea in your mind. Okay, this is something very important, and this has to be done, right? So that is extremely important. Go with the flow, as I've already said. And then let me just think. What else can I tell in terms of my learnings from ISB? Yeah, I think about maintaining discipline, one very important thing. So discipline in terms of what to eat. There's no one to actually nudge you here, because at home, okay, if you're really eating a lot of junk, maybe someone can come and tell you, Siddhant, why are you eating so much junk? My sister is like, Siddhant should stop. I mean, not that I was eating, I'm just giving an example. But here you need to make your own discipline with respect to your eating habits, your sleeping habits, your fitness routine, your regime. So all of that, I think, is something which comes with living an independent life. So that is one thing. And I think the last and the most important learning is tea, making good tea. I think that has been one of the most intricate learnings, I would say. So yeah, so I mean, there are many more. I can sum up many more, but broadly, yes, these are some of the few learnings that I have had here. And it's important to be regular, sincere, and I think these are just the standard learnings which probably stem from any academic journey. But the more ISB specific ones would be this.
Right. And in fact, our entire discussion throws light upon what your experiences and your learning experiences actually have been at ISB. So, yeah, that sums it up really well. Now, one final question, sir. You've already been placed in a management consulting firm from ISB. So, if you can give us a brief about how is the placement experience been and what is the company, if you can reveal, which will be joining.
Sure. So, this year we had our placements completely online, and this was the first time for the school, first time for us to have an entirely online placement. But I thoroughly enjoyed the placement process. I would say that so the build up to the placements, of course, there is a lot of I would say there are different emotions that run through the entire cohort in the build up to the placements for those 1-2 months, and more especially this time, since it was online, there were a fair bit of apprehensions about how it will span out, how all the various rounds will happen, and how will we actually come out and show ourselves, as opposed to a physical interview where it's much more easier to convey your emotions and to be you. But having said that, I think since I was aiming for a management consulting role, my 2 months prior to placements were more about case prep, getting in touch with so many more people, forming groups, practicing different cases. And this is the other aspect of placements, right? You'll get in touch with so many more people, you'll form so many more special bonds, you'll practice together, you'll have tea together, you'll have snacks together, dinner together, and that's the beautiful part about preparing for the placements. So it was more about that. And on the final day, the placement process, we had it, as I said, all online. The school had partnered with a vendor where all the shortlisting and the interviews and everything happened through a centralized portal. And the case round and everything, of course, since we have already been attending lectures on Zoom, as we had prepared us very well for an online environment. So it turned out well. I mean, more specifically, I can highlight that on a case-by-case basis, if someone would like to know. In terms of the company that I'm joining, I'll be joining Arthur D. Little. It's the oldest management consulting firm in the world, and I'll be joining as a senior business analyst there. And hoping to start my work soon in somewhere in September 2021.
Great. All right. So that I'm sure this particular interaction will help a lot of viewers bust a lot of myths and get clarity on whether they want to further pursue an MBA or continue with their qualification as a chartered accountant in their professional journey. Thanks a lot, sir. Any parting remarks that you would like to give to all our three aspirants out there?
No, so I mean. So I would just say that just believe in yourself and just be confident about whatever you're doing, and just stay positive. I would say, for all the, let's say, I mean, maybe I'll first address the C aspirants. There is we always have a lot of thoughts coming across our mind, but if you work hard, you work diligently, and be regular. I've not known anyone who's done that and not cleared his or her examination. So just keep that belief in you, and just feel free. I'll be more than happy to help you in any way I can. We can have a specific one-on-one discussion as well. For all those who are contemplating an MBA, of course, just make sure that it's a personal choice and not driven by any necessity to do an MBA. Just make sure that you do an MBA because you personally want to do it, and you want to do it for reasons which are more specific to you, and not because the world is saying that you should do an MBA, right? And yeah, most importantly, go with the flow, keep smiling, stay happy, stay safe, and yes, you have I think people like Harshit to look up to. So just keep smiling, guys, and stay safe. And thanks, Harshit, again for having me. I think it's heartening to actually have a student come back and take your interview, and it's something that just makes teachers proud, and you just given me a proud moment. And all the best, Harshit.
Thanks a lot. Thanks.